I'm Billy S, you saw the title of this video, I just want to make something stupid that makes me giggle, so how about elevators, am I right? Fucking love those things. They go up, they go down, and they're low-key quite iconic in this series for various reasons. Look, I just think they're neat, and I don't care if you say I'm running out of ideas. Some of my best videos come from an idea drought. Top 10 Dark Souls ladders, the Dark Souls bonfire rankings. Come on, I've been doing this since the start. Damn, I wish when I could make whatever I wanted without the comments assuming the channel was done. So, screw it. This is my channel, I can rank what I want. My favorite elevator from each Soulsborne game. Gone wrong, gone sexual. For legal reasons, that last part was a joke. For Demon Souls, I think most people would go with the elevator leading up to the King Allant boss fight in 1-4, because it's great at building tension as you approach the final boss in terms of difficulty in the game, which is lovely if you don't have a giant dragon screaming constantly, not to mention doing a run back if you die to the boss means having to wait the lengthy time for this elevator to finish all over again. And I ain't about that life. I'd rather take a horrifying human cage into a festering putrid swamp, thank you very much. The 3-2 cage into the swamp is the most memorable elevator to me in Demon Souls. It has a very distinct change in scenery as you lower, realizing that Latria is far more fucked than you ever thought possible. The swamp creatures and the liquid just oozes this sensation of disgust that you could at least pretend to ignore while on the walkways high above the clouds. But also, this is a cage. That is such an interesting design for an elevator, something we've seen FromSoft use since in multiple games, but this was the original as far as I can tell, and I think it's actually horrifying. Imagine being stuck in a closed cage and lowered into the swamp, not knowing if the mechanism will actually stop before you submerge completely into the muck. Claustrophobia, oh no, you better don't! I love my job. For Dark Souls, elevators started to become more the norm. You have Ornstein and Smo getting personal lifts in Anor Londo, you've got elevators that take you between areas you wouldn't expect, like Valley of the Drakes and the Basin, you've got the super speed of the Ulasil elevators going into the Chasm of the Abyss, and you've got the Water Wheel in Blighttown, which almost made this list due to how different it is while still functioning as an elevator. But I have to go with the classic, the Undead Parish to Firelink Shrine elevator. This likely doesn't seem very special to players who started with Elden Ring or Dark Souls 3, but for those of us who started with the earlier games, this elevator represented our first look at how interconnected the world of Lordran was. Dark Souls is a 3D Metroidvania, it always has been, and yet when you start the game and everyone's talking about the difficulty and you're used to warping between bonfires like newer titles, having all of that stripped away can really help you appreciate the world design here. And when you take an elevator, having made it through the Undead Burg and Parish, only to find yourself back at Firelink Shrine where you started, it's a mind-blowing moment. On top of that, the elevator has a few secrets. You can parkour onto some roofing to get to the Undead Asylum key, and the nest that will take you back to the Northern Asylum, and if you drop down the hole beneath the elevator shaft at the bottom, you'll find some extra chests to raid above the graveyard. Not bad, Dark Souls. I must sound like an absolute boomer saying this is such an iconic elevator, but you had to be here back in the day. The context is so vital. From an elevator that showcases gorgeous interconnectivity to the complete opposite. I don't care. My favorite lift in Dark Souls 2 is the Earthen Peak to Iron Keep elevator. There was never any competition here for me. It is the highest form of camp that I have seen in these games. The developers did not give a single fuck about how these areas would connect, and I just have to give it my finger snaps. To explain the controversy, Earthen Peak is a solitary mountain with no other mountains surrounding it. Yet when you defeat Mytha, you find an elevator that takes you directly upwards into a lava-filled volcanic region that, if you're paying attention, you can't see from Harvest Valley. It lends to the theory that Dark Souls 2 actually takes place in a dream, and how the interconnectivity of the world is thrown out of balance, specifically because it's not supposed to make sense. You go to so many different area types on your journey that, of course, a Poison Valley would somehow turn into a lava-filled nightmare. The reason it got flack was because Dark Souls had such a tightly designed world where every area made sense in relation to each other, even in gameplay, and Dark Souls 2 just decided to fuck that and do the opposite. And also, it's Dark Souls 2, the punching bag of the franchise, even if I love it to death. But honestly, I've really come to appreciate over the years the sheer stupidity of this elevator, the absolute audacity that it has to exist, and what started as suspicious disappointment back in the day has looped around to being so bad that it's actually good again. If Dark Souls 2 ever gets remade, they cannot change this, it would destroy the magic. But if they want to put Harvest Peak against a large mountain to make the transition make sense, I'm not going to tell them no, but I will tell them to subscribe to the channel. Bloodborne doesn't have the most interesting elevators, I've got to admit. You've got the various setups in the Forbidden Woods, which act as great shortcuts, but which aren't that spectacular. You've got the cages in the Nightmare of Mensis that let you get onto the Winter Lantern Bridge, which is iconic in its own way. But I think we can all agree that the ride from the Hunter's Nightmare to the Research Hall is the best the game has to offer. It's not just an elevator, it's a work of art, an altar that our Vicar Amelia prays to before we slaughter her and her friends so we can ride it. This is an elevator I enjoy because not only is it stylized in such a way where you're not actually expecting it to be an elevator, making the initial ride a sudden surprise, but it also holds its own unique secret. Head back down the elevator after reaching the research hall, then send it back up again and hop off, and you'll find an entirely new altar rising up to greet you from the depths below. This is the true secret of this lift, the Skull of Lawrence, the first Vicar. You need this to access the Lawrence fight in the main cathedral near the start of the Hunter's Nightmare, and I love when they hide secrets like this on elevators, and I wish they would keep doing it more often. Surprise upon surprise upon surprise with this elevator, I gotta say, sets a really high bar. Definitely one of my top 3 elevators in the series, alongside our Dark Souls entry, and the Elden Ring entry you'll see soon enough. For Dark Souls 3, I was torn between 2 elevators, and I'm gonna say it, the Siegward elevator is my runner-up here. It's the one where you approach it in the undead settlement and it starts moving on its own, revealing this game's Onion Knight. It's another of those elevators where there are actually 2 directions it can go, depending on whether you're standing on the upper or lower platform. You have to figure out that if you activate the elevator, then roll off it before it takes you away, you'll be able to access the other half. It's iconic. One leads down to the Road of Sacrifices and that tough Outrider Knight, while the other leads up to the Giant, as well as the secret area leading to a Fire Demon. But there's one other elevator that, while maybe not as important to the gameplay of Dark Souls 3, is iconic in another way, a fanservice-y way. I'm talking about the staircase elevator leading up to Anor Londo. I didn't mention it in my Dark Souls entry, despite it arguably having more gameplay focus there, because I knew I'd be bringing it up here. It's one of the largest elevators in the series in terms of the structure that actually moves, and the way it spirals around as it slots into place is just so satisfying to look at. But for Dark Souls 3, it's also a shock to the player. The reveal of Anor Londo is gradual, but this elevator is when the penny should truly drop for anyone who didn't quite catch the Tomb of Gwyn beforehand. I know it's fan service, but it's good fan service, and I just feel a sense of comfort from an elevator I recognize. You can even use it to reach Yorshka if you want to join her covenant as well, which is a nice surprise. But it's just the fact that it's here, it really sells the hype of Anor Londo, and is something we all wanted to see. Okay, funny story. Sekiro only has one elevator, so by default, the winner is the elevator from the abandoned dungeon to Senpo Temple. Congratulations! Now, this makes a lot of sense. This is not a terribly advanced civilization in terms of mechanical marvels, and this is represented by the only elevator we find in-game being made of mostly wood and ropes, barely held together and rickety as fuck. I always feel like I'm about to watch it snap and break under my weight as I roll up to Senpo. But then, this is also meant to be a hidden elevator, right? Connected to the abandoned dungeon. I can't confirm this as I barely know the lore, but the implication is totally that the Senpo monks were taking prisoners from Ashina for their experiments. In which case, this elevator being this near-broken thing that barely functions makes sense. It's not supposed to stand out, it needs to be inconspicuous. I think had we gotten any elevators in Ashina Castle, for example, they would function in a more modern way. It's just the fact it's connected to Senpo Temple, where the monks live more frugal lives, that dictates why this elevator feels out of the Dark Ages. God, there's nothing to say in this entry, this format is crashing down. Elden Ring is a game with elevators. But Elden Ring is also a game where one elevator has dominated the elevator conversation for years. An elevator who keeps winning the coveted Elevator of the Year award, and now all the other elevators are over it. I'm of course talking about the elevator down to Shifra River. It has made the rest of the elevators in this franchise look like chump change by comparison, as it's one of the longest elevators in the series, while also having one of the best views. Have I said the word elevator enough yet? There is something inherently magical about finding a random elevator. I can't, why did I use that word so much? There's something so magical about finding a random lift in the forest, activating it and expecting to enter a small dungeon, only to keep descending and descending into an entire underground area. The caverns are lit with crystals that shine like stars in the night sky. A vast series of temples and structures expand outwards into the horizon, and that's before we discover that this area has two entirely different layers you explore at varying points in the game. It's a moment where Elden Ring expands in a way none of us thought possible when the game first launched. We knew the lands between would be big, but nobody thought we'd be getting not one, but 4 large underground areas to explore. Just watching people's reactions to Shifra River for the first time is beautiful. It gives that same feeling I had with Dark Souls and its interconnectivity, but here in Elden Ring, it's about the joy of exploring and discovering something new. It's one of the rawest examples of Miyazaki's philosophy behind Elden Ring's exploration, and I think this will remain the best elevator in the franchise for a long time to come. I can't even imagine what type of elevator would beat one that goes directly to the center of the goddamn Earth. Maybe one that goes up to space? Though I guess Xenoblade 2 beat us to that one. And that's my list. Which elevator is your favorite in the Soulsborne series? And do you think that I am washed up? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos, and maybe leave some more suggestions for some of these more jokey rankings. I really do enjoy doing these. A massive shout out to my YouTube channel members. $4.99 gets you early access to certain videos, shout out in the description at the end of videos as well, and access to my Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 run. And I want to give a shout out to my social medias, Twitch, Discord, Blue Sky. I've completely forgotten my script, but they're great. They're great to follow me. You should follow me at those places. It's a great idea. Can you tell it's such a fantastic idea, even though it's 40 degrees out right now? Adios.